Oh Lord, I'm on a permanent holiday. I'm going outside to play. I ain't gonna slave away. Not for no corporate Babylon. I'm never gonna be a pawn in their manipulation game.
Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of the Lords of Consciousness videocast. I am your host, Clint Culberson, coming to you from the rainy deserts of Arizona. We just had an amazing hurricane front from the Gulf of California coming up from Mexico, and it rained all over the desert. We got a couple inches, so we're feeling really good. And I'm really excited for this conversation today. Joe Martino, the founder of Collective Evolution, and if you have awakened in the last 10 years of your life, you probably on some point, and you've been on the internet, you've probably at some point come across some sort of content from Collective Evolution. And I can say, even for myself, when I first kind of came online, the Facebook world, and even on YouTube, just as a consumer of it, I started running into all sorts of Collective Evolution articles on different consciousness groups and awakening groups and things like that. And so it's a real pleasure to be joined by Joe, because your vision, Joe, at Collective Evolution is something that I just wholeheartedly, jump on with. I was telling you before how the vision statement of my media site here with Lords of Consciousness could literally be a copy and paste from what you're doing in terms of your vision with conscious media and how we're trying to bring the pendulum a little back to the middle. Let's see both sides of everything. So welcome to the show, brother. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to do this, and it's always good to have, deeper conversations about this sort of stuff. And to be honest, now that it's like, we've talked, we're live here, I'm going to share something with you that's actually kind of interesting that I hadn't shared with you yet. I've been like, what? I've been feeling like I was feeling it really deep within. I'm like, I got to start doing interviews again. I got to start, getting out there again, sharing this message of what conscious media is, because we've kind of worked real hard to sort of dial in what we feel is a good expression of what that is and how to describe it so that it can get out there and we can continue to have these conversations and continue to do it. And so here I am, I've been meditating really deeply on just opening up more and spreading this message and getting it out there. And then literally after my second meditation, you sent me an email saying, hey, let's do this interview. And I'm like, okay. And then someone else had sent another one, let's do this interview. And we're just going to be, let's
Nice.
just get into it. It's
hey, man,
flowing.
The little birdie flew on my shoulder and said, you got to reach out to him. Okay. All right, listen, man.
That's it. That's all.
Oh, beautiful. That's really awesome to hear. And I think it's really one thing that I love about this media space, where we grew up in a world where it's competing media, it's like, the other media source is a bad guy, and it's like the Fox and CNN, rivalry kind of thing. And I know we're not anything close to what those kind of networks are, but we are on some level, at least, it's a shred of it. And I think it's so cool how, one thing, when I started watching the Joe Rogan podcast many years ago, and he would bring on all of his comedians and talk about how, hey man, there's no competition here. Your success is my success here. When you get a great show, I'm celebrating for you, as opposed to, the immature comedian who would think we live in this world of scarcity and there can only be success for a small amount, and I think many of us in the conscious media, and I like that much better than even the alternative media, are seeing that, hey man, let's raise each other up in every way, and then also even discuss let's keep each other honest, maybe, what is objective, journalism in a sense, and what is objective media, and what we do got to be careful that we're not creating these echo chambers. And I think that's one thing that you've been seeing a lot, as you venture into the conspiracy worlds, or even the spiritual world, whatever you want to call it. There can be this propensity to create a echo chamber of we only want to listen to this one this one type of truth, if you will. And I mean, I just got kicked out of the Destroying the Illusion group on Facebook just because some people didn't want to hear me bringing up contrarian points to some of the stuff that Trump's doing. And it's like, hey man, it's okay. And it is what it is. But
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of ask you, because one of the things that you are so great at doing is depolarizing the situation, and you are so good at showing, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly, but then also coming to it from like a vantage point where instead of getting all emotionally crazy about one side or the other, let's just look at it from a real bird's eye view. And I just wanted you to kind of touch on this absolute vital importance on depolarizing things at the moment. Yeah,
absolutely. And you know, it's by chance, I guess you could say, or by perfection, however you want to look at it. The Trump topic is actually a really good way to dissect this stuff. And I think you saw it and you experienced it with your removal from that group there. But I mean, I'm not going to say anything about any particular group because I don't know who runs them and who does them. But
right. And by the way, it can just literally be one person. It could be one moderator who even, this doesn't even mean it's not Jordan Sather or something like that. I just mean it's like you can see even within our own communities, there's very polarized people right now.
For sure. And what I think is interesting about the Trump situation and you know, how we've always covered it is like, you know, okay, so in our normal course of action, we want to say like, we want to see everything black and white. Either Trump's for us or against us. He's either helping or he's not helping. He's you know, meanwhile, it's like when you look at the gamut of what's taking place experience-wise, it's like, you know, people are in the space of, let's say, awareness, and they're into alternative media. They're into exploring the world and its truths. They want like to look at Trump as like, oh, he's doing everything good, and every single action he takes is like just helping and working for humanity. And so even when he does something that's like one of these, like, why would he do that? We're trying to find ways as to how he's actually doing it for good. And it's like, okay, hold on a second. Let's look at who Trump is in the way he's operating, right? Like he has various challenges to his character. He's the way he speaks. Now, sometimes is he doing it to gain a specific audience? For sure. But other times, like the dude's not Gandhi, or I shouldn't even say Gandhi, but he's not like some next coming of Christ who's going to be the perfect conscious individual. He's what he needs to be for where humanity is at. And so, which means sometimes he's going to do stuff that isn't so good, and sometimes he's going to do stuff that is good. But what I always see is that he seems to be working and is connected to individuals that are continuing to divide this deep state and continuing to divide this cabal, where you have one side and you have another side, and they used to be together and all did the same thing, and now they're pulling away. And one is a little bit more in favor of doing things that humanity would say yes to, and the other side doesn't want that at all. And the other side could be viewed as you know, the way Hillary and them would have been, and all that sort of thing. And the other side is sort of this counterintelligence. There's divisions happening in the NSA and the CIA and the FBI, and they're working together. And Trump's just part of the piece. He's not the guy running the whole thing and, you know, doing all these decisions. He's just part of that process, and that's it. So what that means is sometimes things are going to happen, and it's like, you know, this isn't the best thing in the world, and you got to be able to see that, and you got to be able to not make it about faith of like he is the new Messiah or he's not the new Messiah.
Yeah, or that he's a Rothschild agent. You know, it's like, does it have to be one or the other?
Right, exactly. Can it not be that there's a switch? And this is where that is so important when you talk about echo chambers and when you talk about what's happening in media. And you know, I have a lot of experience with this in speaking with a lot of admins, and there's a story that we can talk about in a moment. It's about some of the Facebook page bans. I'll make another point, but I'd like to come back to that if we have a chance.
Dude,
but it's essentially like there's a lot of this, like, you know, here's what we believe in alternative media. There's a cabal, and they do stuff. They own all the media. They own everything, and everything that comes out is an agenda, and everything is trying to, you know, do this. And that's our narrative. And then all of a sudden, stuff starts to change, and new things start to come out, and it's actually good. And we can't figure out why the media decided to cover this, or why this one story somehow leaked out of the media. We can't figure it out, and we're trying to find the agenda because we're sticking to our narrative of they control everything. Meanwhile, it's like, maybe there is no agenda, because guess what? The world's changing. And if the world changes, it means aspects of these systems and structures are also going to change. So really, it's about having the discernment. It's about taking responsibility and empowering your own discernment, as opposed to having a belief system and filtering everything through that belief system. You throw this away and you go, okay, what is every situation, every unique case for what it is? And that's what we're being asked to do. And it's why people say, I'm so confused by media. It's like, yeah, because you're being asked to discern truthfully.
So how does one sharpen their discernment skills?
Yeah. A lot of it is like, we talk about this in a protocol that we're releasing very, very shortly. It's essentially like a mini course that's going to go along with all of our media. And what it really is it's about recognizing yourself as who you are beyond the mind, beyond the belief systems, beyond the ego, beyond the perceptions of everything. And this is a process that like a muscle gets strengthened over time. The more we sort of deprogram and let go of the ideas that are hard and fast, the more we ask ourselves questions, the more we slow down, we don't react, we don't, get emotional about information, and we actually go, okay, what am I feeling? Like practicing being in that state when you're looking at information. And then perhaps, because the mind and the body and the soul, they work together, the discernment, the heart has an intuitive intelligence, right? They work together. So the more you allow these various aspects to work together, so sometimes, we're pulling in some facts and we're taking those facts and we're processing it through our intuition and our discernment, and we're allowing these things to happen. And the more we practice that, the more we do that, the more we slow down, practice meditation, practice things like removing distractions from your life every 5 seconds and slow down back to your natural state. Mm-hmm. You'll start to have what we call gut feelings more often, and you'll recognize more clearly what they are and what they're trying to tell you. So, in a crude form, that's a sort of a way of how we can continue to develop that. But really, it's like in a very everyday, when you're watching something and you see a video come out and you see a post come out, pay attention to sort of the visceral reaction that sometimes happens. You either will get an emotional stance like, that's true, or that can't be true, or I'm mad at this person, or how dare they be a sheeple, or whatever it is, all these different things that happen. And sit that for a second and go, okay, what are they really saying? Or what is that story really saying? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times you'll find and I was saying this in a previous video I did where I was talking about mainstream journalists. A lot of these mainstream journalists are coming from a place not where, the CIA is in their ear. They're coming from a place where their narrative is just the programming that's in society. Mm-hmm. And so it's not like they're writing the story that they got from the CIA guy and they're just going and doing it. It's that they're just operating off their programming. Mm-hmm. And so we have to be able to empathize and see where their programming is to understand what might be a truth or what might be just their programming, or, and it's important to have when we're looking at media, both on the mainstream and alternative media side.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of what you were talking about really brought up this idea of living a balanced life. And one thing that I've experienced, especially as you kind of go into the conspiracy world and you start really looking into, human history and what's really been going on, and you start to realize, man, it's a little darker than I ever imagined. And then you keep going, and you have this like appetite to keep finding more. And I found in my own life that when I spent too much of my time in that world, I became imbalanced in other ways. Other parts of me weren't getting attention, and so now I'm in this like left brain masculine mode of like, I'm gonna solve all the world's problems and I'm gonna figure it out. We're gonna come get these guys, and I notice myself, I start becoming polarized. I start reacting to oh, that's so stupid and blah 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 blah, and I realize that I realized that all of my life needs to be addressed, like the spiritual side of me, the more softer sides of myself, the feminine sides of myself need to be given attention, and to be constantly nurturing the gardens of all of our gardens, if you will. And I think that's when we become a really balanced person. If you can stop consuming content all the time and, get yourself quiet down a little bit and really have, focus on the nothingness of it all as well. When you come back to doing your own research and ingesting all of this, your lens is it's so much clearer and cleaner in a sense. And I think that's really what you're talking about. And I've seen it in my own life. And so anyone who's listening, especially any of my brothers and sisters of freedom, this is a spiritual thing as well. And if you're not looking at that side of yourself and fostering that part of you, you're going to get imbalanced, and honestly, you could get led astray in many ways. And I think we see that in our greater community, everybody, including ourselves, you know, in our own individual lives, we're all kind of trying to find the balance, and sometimes we go off the wrong path and we come back, and thank goodness we have other people in our lives who can help us do that. And I'm sure you've seen that in your own life, right, Joe?
Yeah, absolutely. And, to touch on, I guess I always use an analogy, like, and a lot of people who explore truth will kind of know what I'm saying here, but then it kind of flips on ourselves here. So it's kind of like, I always say, because sometimes people will say, well, hold on, like, isn't this just about spirituality? Shouldn't I just be shifting my consciousness? I don't want to look at the fact that there's a cabal. That's all negative, right? And they'll do that. And then you'll find that those people have a view of the world such that they think that, if they keep going to the voting station, that things will change. Yeah. They think that all politicians are just who they are. They don't realize that there's a mechanism. And, I always say that you will never understand the world clearly if you don't understand how it works. And if you pay attention to things through the lens of, we just have economies, and like there's just politicians, we vote for them, and they do their best to do the things, and the governments are there. And if you take that lens, you'll never understand what's going on, and nor will we ever change anything, because we're trying to change something we have no idea what it even is, right? So it's important to know the truth. And the way I flip it is, it's sort of like, if you then go through that truth and you never are able to view it outside of the reactionary emotions and the judgment and the anger, right? Because a lot of people believe you need these things to change things. Well, sometimes you may go through the process of feeling the anger or feeling that, and that's one thing. But at some point you have to overcome it. And I say that because if you don't, then guess what? You're in the same position. You don't see the world clearly. Yeah. You don't see what the experience is trying to tell us, which ultimately it's that the world is the way it is because it is a reflection of how unconscious we've been, of how, like this, that we've just been over such a long period of time. And it's showing us that. And what we're being asked to do is not in a, rah-rah way, not in a, let's go out and fucking go, that sort of way, but in a true empowered state. We're being asked to be empowered. We're being asked to go within ourselves and say, okay, let me empower who I truly am in my life every day. Let me know myself. Let me have an understanding of my emotions, have emotional intelligence, understand how my programs and thoughts and stories work in my head that are self-sabotaging, that see scarcity, that see war with others, and all these different thoughts. Let me get rid of that and allow me to operate here, being truly empowered, not empowered through belief systems, but truly empowered. And guess what? That starts to create a world where we don't need all this other stuff, all these rulers taking, and all of their power over us comes from the fact that we believe we're powerless. And we're powerless when we're in these aggressive states of emotion and so forth. So to understand the world and to change it, we also have to do that spiritual end of it, which is really about us at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And part of what you had just described is, when we feel powerless, we look for external saviors in our lives. And I think that can be something that is, it's just been the paradigm we've been in for who knows how long, thousands of years, okay? And I guess this really is what the awakening of humanity is realizing that, the power doesn't come from outside of us, that it really truly does come from inside of each and every one of us. And with that being said, I kind of wanted to transition into QAnon. You had done some videos about QAnon, and one of the things that I've watched it from pretty much the beginning. I think the month after he started, or whatever, they started putting stuff out. I've kind of been following it, and I've seen the rise of many YouTubers who've been following this, and I've seen so much good come out of it, to be honest with you, and in many ways it's given people like a rallying point together, and it's brought people together. And I was talking about the Destroying the Illusion Facebook group. There's been people in there that they do get-togethers, and people are talking about these things together. And I mean, that's amazing. How can you say that this is super positive, what's coming out of it? Now, with that said, do you think that the QAnon revelations have the potential to create a scenario where people are sitting around looking for an external savior. And it's maybe this isn't so much about the validity of QAnon or not. I mean, whatever. That's to everyone to figure out for themselves. But if Q is, is this idea of the white hats and everything, does this lead to a potential issue for us that we're just going to wait around for something?
Yeah, I think the way I always kind of describe it, because I totally understand the point you're bringing up, and I totally feel that not just Q, but other things have done a very similar thing. Like, for example, when people speak of the event and that whole thing, there is that sense that it could make people sit back and just kind of on their couch, okay, we'll just wait for 2012 to happen. And after 2012, it's all taken care of, and we're just. And I do believe that again, it goes back to the polarity thing. We may want to look at it as it's and this is what happens when people are looking for, is this disinfo or is it not? Well, it's kind of like, it doesn't matter whether it's disinfo or not if we take responsibility for ourselves, no matter what the story is, right? Whether it's a new whistleblower that comes out and says something, or whether it's a new phenomena that comes out and is promising something. If we take responsibility for ourselves and for our journey and for how we act and for how we be, how we treat each other, our consciousness, all this stuff, then it completely doesn't even matter whether or not it's a disinfo agent or whether it's some ploy to kind of get us to relax, right? And, I do think that if we choose through our own actions to sit back and go, okay, Q's got it handled, we'll just kind of, do this, right? Then absolutely, for those people, it may become I'm waiting around forever. But the flip side to it is there will be a fire, so to speak, that gets lit under their ass to say, okay, you want to sit back in a time where we're being asked to question ourselves, to be, change the way we act, change the way we live. Well, I'm going to heat up life a little bit. Maybe a difficult situation sort of happens in your life, or maybe you're really uninspired by your job and you got to make that change, and you go through all these different life-changing and life-exploring questions and things that ultimately are asking you to get out of the programmed state of just being like this, living entirely through the mind, and ask you to start feeling again, to start connecting again. Because reality is, when we get into that state and we're feeling and connecting and really practicing and really understanding who we are, and we're not just in the mind, then the world, we actually do come together. And we actually start to create solutions instead of out of this aggressive place sometimes, but that are heartfelt and heart-based. And we create a completely different frequency on the planet. And again, we can see this through a lot of scientific research that has been seen through what the Institute of Heart Math has done in terms of, creating an overall magnetic field from the heart that would emanate. We're talking about consciousness experiments. Like, there's so much evidence to back up the fact that this is our way forward, that regardless of Q or all these different things, which I think are helping to get people to realize, break the illusion and realize what's going on in our world. But ultimately, we still have to, I always say, the conspiracy world and spirituality are intimately connected. They're not separate. They're intimately connected. It's all part of this thing we call life, right? And to separate them is to create an illusion. And we got to bring them together.
Yeah. I like how you said, we try to be the Alex Jones group and combine them with all the hippies, man. Somewhere in between, because I suppose you can look at each of those communities as just counterculture movements, and people who have rejected the mainstream culture in some way. Maybe it's certain factions. Maybe it's more like the spiritual side of things, and that's where the hippies go, if you will. And maybe it's more of the geopolitical, economic people who break away and see, this is bullshit, and they see the corruption, and they end up more in these conspiracy groups. And again, when we say conspiracy, yeah, there are some theories that are unverifiable, but overall, there, without a doubt, is a grand conspiracy that has taken place on this earth. We don't know all the details. Maybe we don't got them all exactly right, but it is undeniable that there is a true grand conspiracy going on. And I've I've lived the same thing. It's like half of my friends that fit into both of those camps, and maybe there's a little of that left brain, right brain friends who, depending on what they tend to be, they fall into either of those. And either way, it's kind of like bridging the two hemispheres. And I think that's this. I've said it many times, and I part of my own mission is to be a bridge builder. Because man, we're in this together, whether you like it or not. Okay, so we better. The objective here is to bridge, to bridge the gaps here. That's the objective, and we've had these tools, like the internet. So many people again get polarized by technology now. I'm seeing like such a backlash, like, technology's led us down a wrong path. I'm getting off social media is brainwashing you and blah, blah. You go on the negative side of things. And on some elements it is. It's kind of the same argument of, do guns kill people or do people kill people? It's like a gun is just a tool. So is your damn Facebook. How are you going to use it? Are you going to stay in balance with it? Or are you going to be on it all day, wasting all your time and sucking up, almost too much of the collective energy, or are you going to, or maybe like you've mentioned in other interviews I've heard you say, like, is it about just going and meditating up in the mountains, 24/7? I mean, I don't know, maybe for some, but I would say for most of us, we're kind of have a calling of a more balanced approach here, and we're probably kind of meant to live together a little, and create these new communities that we know are possible. And we're in this time period where we're trying to make this transition. And again, as I was saying, we're here before the collapse, before maybe a financial collapse that's coming. Do you see the change happening within the current institutions? We're starting to see more conscious politicians running, and I'm sure you've seen it, like a Tulsi Gabbard type out in Hawaii. We're seeing even down in Texas that one guy that is running against Ted Cruz. I don't know I don't know his full story, but he's saying more conscious things. Even Bernie Sanders, no matter what you think about him, like he took the pendulum even further, and we're starting to see younger people run, and I that's inspiring to me. Okay, cool, man. I can see. I would love to have some cool white hats like taking over huge budgets and turning things around. I mean, God, that would be the coolest thing ever. Do you see it as more likely to be a change that we infiltrate the system and we take it over that way, or do you see it more as a grassroots solution stemming from the corpse of a collapsed system? And maybe both.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a combination. I think from what I feel and what I've always envisioned and what I know is just the idea that whatever happens is going to be where the collective is ready for and where they're at. Do you know what I mean? Like, imagine the economy had collapsed today, like, just right now, and you really think about the collective in their state of being, and they're en masse, the lack of understanding that we have as a collective, right, as a whole here, the lack of understanding that we have about how our world actually works, right? So we would think en masse that what happened was the economy collapsed, but we absolutely need this thing. And we got to get the policymakers and we got to get the government people back into fixing this thing, because we're, and that's where the focus en masse would be, is us trying to fix that. So then you ask the question, what purpose did that serve if all we're going to do is recreate it, right? Because what we do is we create these systems as a whole, collectively, based on what we're believing and what we're feeling we need to do as a whole, right? A lot of times those ideas get hijacked, like the elite. They hijack these ideas by disseminating levels of consciousness into people and ideas and belief systems, and then we operate off of those. And they hold that in place so that we continue to, have our scarcity mindsets, have our individualized, like, you're coming to get me, all this stuff. And when we have that, we can't organize. And so we stay in a state of consciousness that believes that we need money to exchange. And so we're going to create a world where we need money to exchange things. And so even if it were to collapse, we'd be like, well, first we have to go to barter. And, that system would never work, to be honest. If you actually break down bartering, it doesn't work. how do you get the materials to build something if you can't get the materials, if you don't have specific a skill or something to offer? How do you get, it starts to get really messy really quickly. Mm-hmm. And even with cryptocurrency, right? I believe cryptocurrency is a step. It's a bridge. We were talking about bridges earlier, bridging one state to another. Cryptocurrency is a bridge to get us to go, okay, through this bridge, what are we going to learn? That central banking was a mess. And we're probably going to learn central banking was a ploy of enslavement set up by specific people. Then we're going to learn that we need greater sort of transparency around this stuff. Okay, great. Then people are going to start to go, eventually, they're going to start to go, okay, wait a minute. We're still exchanging shit. We're still using the capitalist system to say, here are the haves and here are the have-nots. And I'm going to try and build as much cryptocurrency as I can off the backs of others so that I can have in control. If you look at what capitalists are doing, mm-hmm. they're actually trying to escape capitalism. They're trying to get themselves to a point where they don't live in the confines of capitalism, because capitalism sucks. Mm-hmm. Plain and simple. It creates people with the haves and the have-nots, and everyone's working for themselves, and it's like, oh no, this is mine, and I had this first, and I have to protect that I had it first, and all this. It's like, is that what we want to live in? It's not about this is right or wrong. It's about, is that how you want to live? That's the question you have to ask yourself, right? Do we want to live in a world that is like that represents the disconnection, that represents everybody fighting for each other? And be careful not to start telling yourself, oh, wait a minute, that's how we are, because that's how human nature is. We fight, we do these things. Bullshit. It's all bullshit, right? That's just what we keep telling ourselves, and that's what science keeps trying to push their little theories on us, but it's not who we truly are, and we know that, and we see that, right? So do I believe it's going to come from a fully collapsed system? In some cases, perhaps, yes. I do believe there's going to be times where there's going to be some level of global chaos in a sense. But I also think that things are going to happen in transition, and it's going to follow what humanity is ready to hear. I think a lot is happening within this Trump presidency in terms of, like I said in the video, the deep truth about why Trump's president. I mean, if you really look at what role he's playing, it's getting people to question, getting people outside the box a little bit. He's starting to pull apart some of the bricks, just a few bricks in the Illuminati pyramid, if you want to look at it that way. His job isn't to collapse the whole pyramid. That's not what he's here to do. It's just pull a couple of bricks out so that people can see, oh, okay, that's kind of what's going on. And then guess what? Someone else is going to come in and continue along that journey, but it's going to come down to us. We got to shift our consciousness. We got to take our power back. We got to start empowering ourselves truthfully. And that is what's really going to change things. And that's going to decide how much we need bridges and how much we need, maybe larger scale just collapses. And, how will we react to some of these things? That's what's going to decide how these things sort of shift and unfold.
You've been covering so many different things out there in terms of, you've been seeing solutions ever since you've been doing collective evolution. I mean, covering them. Not only do you kind of show and expose what's going wrong with the world, but you also show what's going right with the world and the solutions. We have all the solutions for the most part. Like, they're here. We can literally change the entire environmental issues that we have on some level. I mean, who knows? I'm sure there's a level of climate change and that kind of thing that it is what it is. It might be even bigger than anything we can do at this point. But we can fix the imbalances that we have all around the world. What is your vision of community of tomorrow? Like, what we say, we don't like it the way it is, but unless anyone really does it in a better way, then we'll just keep being led down the wrong paths by, the psychopath peeps. I mean, even after a post-collapse, I'm sure there will be different psychopaths that want to keep this old system going. And so if there aren't people that are conscious people who are coming together and creating collective models at work, then people won't, they won't know what to do in many ways.
Yeah. Yeah. It's about getting us to a state where we're operating from a different place within ourselves. And, when it comes to these models, I always say this, and we actually did in our CETV platform, we did an interview with someone who's, president of the New Energy Movement, and her testimony with my direct experience and what we've seen here. Like, I mean, a few years ago, we were funding one of the prominent, we'll say prominent, we were helping to fund one of the prominent inventors that most people know about in the pre-energy space. We're working very closely as well with a group here in Toronto that I stood there and vetted with my own eyes. And then we had specific people that represented some financiers and represented some technology people that understand this stuff intimately. They vetted this piece of equipment, and this thing works. There is no two ways about it. It is a scalable, controllable. There's no deep development that needs to happen with this device. It 110% works. What needs to happen is rollout, building, manufacturing, all these different ends of it, right? Within the system that we have. So the point here is we were part of /witnessing the right pieces coming together, so to speak, to eventually deploy this technology to different people. There were some challenges. Now, what were those challenges? Greed came into play. Now it was about, well, energy is $1 billion industry. This particular device, once deployed, there's no upkeep. It's lubing some bearings once every 5 years. So we're talking about insane prices profits that you would make charging the same for energy, and yet the cost for that energy to produce is now a fraction of what it costs now. So now profits of all these energy distribution companies goes through the roof. Is that going to be passed on to the customer? It's their choice, right? Because guess what? Right now, it's everyone. You can't distribute these technologies to consumers because it is difficult to install, and all of a sudden there's all these houses that are going off the grid, which they don't even allow you to do. You have to keep your service hooked up, right? It's going to create a lot of these problems. So what they were looking to do was deploy it to some of these bigger energy producing conglomerates, right? That produce energy and send it out to the homes, right? Mm-hmm. Well, the consciousness of what started to happen was, well, now you're talking about $1 billion deals. Now you're talking about huge money. Now you're talking about whether or not, these companies are actually going to pass the savings on to the customer, or whether they're just going to say, hey, well, this is helping with CO2 emissions, and that's your part. And so you start to realize we're still using the energy technologies in the same level of consciousness, the same disconnected capitalist type way that we've been doing in this state of consciousness this entire time. Well, guess what? These technologies aren't meant for that level of consciousness. And time again, you see the same thing happen. Sometimes it has nothing to do with the elite coming in and burying the inventor. And I know this firsthand. A lot of times it's the project just cannot see the light of day because the consciousness won't allow it. We're not ready for these technologies. We're still fighting over things that are about disconnection. This needs to be for me, and you can't have that. We're still in that state, and these technologies are not for that. So when we still operate from that state, that's us voting as people saying, I don't want to see change. I don't want to see these things because I'm not ready to change within myself to a point where we're going to lift all of us up. I'm still thinking, I just want to lift me up, and these technologies are not for that level of being. So what do we need to see? We need to start to be and act and live these things. And these technologies, these solutions that are already there, and I've vetted tons of them. I know lots of different ones that are out there. We've been talked by a lot of people. There's tons of stuff. There's absolutely no shortage. It is an absolute joke what we see happening in solar with stuff that Tesla's bringing out. This is joke technology, absolute joke compared to what's actually out there. But this is what they're limited to. This is what they have to do. Hey, if you want to play, this is all you're allowed to do. But at the same time, if they keep suppressing our consciousness and we keep agreeing to that, the world won't be ready for these technologies. So that's the work we got to do to bring this stuff out.
Yeah, that's a really interesting connection, and one that I'm not so sure I've even contemplated myself. And when you have technologies based on a different economic model, you're right. It won't be here until we're ready for it. Now,
for sure.
When I do look at this, it's something I think about often. But I start doing the math in my head of this entire economic system that is infiltrated across the world, and how as much as I don't like some of them, how much of my own life depends on them. Okay, it's like I don't like factory farming, but sometimes I eat shit from factory farm raised stuff. Okay, it just is what it is, and I'm trying my best to, make the percentage go the other way, and hopefully one day I get to 100% on that. But I sometimes wonder if humanity is ever going to consciously make this decision, or if the decision on some levels has to be forced upon us. And that's kind of life in general. Sometimes you catch yourself before you fall off the cliff, and you go, oh, okay, I better stop drinking so much, or whatever habit you get that kind of goes out of control. But sometimes we don't, and sometimes it's like you need that smack in the head from the universe. Like, okay, does it hurt? You got cancer now. Are you going to change your health? You got a domestic dispute. Is it time to get out of that stupid relationship? And the list goes on. Yeah. And I wonder, even like from a global environmental standpoint and a global economic standpoint, if I just don't see under the current model, like enough of us getting out, like making this decision on our own willfully, and there are some, I'm not saying there aren't, but enough to really make a massive change of how this is happening. 99% of food is still coming from these nutty farms, and we're all still operating in this crazy nutty, economic system that really is just debt slavery in many ways.
Yeah.
Do you see an inevitability though of a major collapse? And honestly, hallelujah, thank you. I can't wait for it. The opportunities that we may have from something like this will be just astronomical, and the whole game changes. Many people who buy land in the communities that they're from and realize, holy shit, it's like way too expensive. You need millions of bucks just to get a couple acres. Maybe something like this will actually make things affordable again. I mean, you think of the positive things that could come from this. Do you see? But Joe? Do you see the inevitability of it?
I definitely see an inevitability of what you could call, via a collapse or via some sort of change, a redistribution of wealth. Such that, one of the early stages of some of these changes that are a little bit more radical, if you want to call them that, would be, okay, let's play with, instead of going from where we are now to, okay, there's no money and we're all living in a utopia. Instead of that, it's, okay, let's play with, we redistribute wealth. And we start to realize that the average person does not and will not even use money in the same way that the controlling elite do and have, because the way they operate, you got to understand, like, and I know you know this, I'm just saying in general, it's like this elite, this cabal, they don't operate like the average person. But when we don't understand the depths of where they're coming from and what they're doing and what they're up to, we assume that where they are in their position of power represents how all people would be in that position. So here we are, in very, very crude terms, you have a group of individuals that sacrifice babies, consume their blood, do rituals, are involved in things that do not even remotely resemble what the average person is doing. In some cases, they're welcoming in entities, they're playing with different entities. And here we are trying to say, oh, well, if we all got in that position, then we would just be operating the same way these people are. Nuh-uh. These people are operating in a religious cult type mentality. This is a big part of what the cabal is. We see this through all the whistleblowers. We just interviewed a whistleblower recently whose story is quite verifiable out there. And it's probably one of the most incredible testimonies and interviews I've ever seen. We have 4 hours of content. Nice. We haven't released it yet, but it's absolutely amazing. And like, you feel this woman in her story, and like this is incredible. But what it allows us to see is that we have to get out of this mode of telling ourselves the stories that, oh, well, these people are powerful and that's how all humans would act. You see it happen every time. This person went from here to, powerful, and then they started to abuse everybody. And it's like, no, this is a specific group of people that operate this way that we're basing everything off of. Most celebrities, that once they get up there, they're unhappy. Mm-hmm. A lot of celebrities, once they get up there, they appear happy. They're under mind control. Mm-hmm. You have all these different things going on. Whereas, how many people do you know that are average person? They get money and they're like, oh, I'd love to help out my family. oh, I'd love to do this, I'd love to do that with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is the reality of the situation. With the redistribution of wealth, we'd also have the opportunity to see that, hey, we can use money, because there's abundance of it now, in ways that actually start to help each other. And we would realize that the average person actually wants a hell of a lot more peace and harmony than what we're led to believe through what we're told through media, what we watch, big time celebrity people or whoever doing. And then we assume, well, that's what all humans would do, right? So this could be absolutely a step, as you were talking about an opportunity to sort of create some new experiences and see things in a different light that would ultimately lead eventually going back to it, which is like, okay, why the heck if we all realize that we all want kind of the same thing and we all want to be in harmony, and like everything that is created comes from Earth, right? We already have it all here. It's on Earth. Mm-hmm. What the hell do we need money for? It's already all here. We just need to organize ourselves and sort of do this stuff, right? Now, that's not, today to tomorrow, but it's understanding these realizations that it's there, right? And again, this is why conscious media is important, is because it allows us to look at what's happening in our world, relate it to why we believe that way, relate it to the deeper aspect of ourselves, relate it to the actual truth, not being afraid to look at the truth of what's happening, but seeing it and going, okay, shit, we created that through our unconsciousness. We created that by going like this. I don't want to see that. That's not good, whatever. But you just keep allowing it. Pizzagate comes out. You have emails that absolutely 110% are following the exact same code words that various intelligence agencies know have to do with pedophilia. Not an investigation, no congressional hearing, nothing. Zero. Sweep it under the rug. Then you see the recent Kavanaugh stuff, which I don't know whether it happened or not. It's a serious thing. We have to explore this, but no evidence, one little testimony, and suddenly congressional hearing. Oh my God, the whole world's a stage for this. And it's, hold on a second. You have actual evidence, very real, involving powerful people. No evidence whatsoever, but a story which we need to listen to, right? And this gets all the attention in the world. This gets swept under the rug. How does that happen? How does that happen, right?
Yeah.
This is what we're being asked to explore and being asked to check within ourselves, right?
Absolutely. And I just want to reiterate for half the people that freaked the fuck out when you said redistribution of wealth. I don't think Joe's talking about, we're going to raise the taxes on the rich people. And when you think rich people, it means like your local doctor and lawyer. No, we're not talking about that. So we're talking about, the massive wealth that is hidden away by a very small, it's not even 1%. It's like the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. I mean, it's an insanely, ridiculously small number of people we're talking about. So, when we talk about this planet and how abundant it is and how wealthy it is, okay, this is a rich planet. And when you talk about how much food we're creating, and yet there's still people who are malnourished, it's ridiculous. Come on here. I mean, when you really see the world from a whole and what its output is, and yet how few people get to it and are adequately served from this planet, it's that's what we're talking about, and that's the redistribution.
We're not talking communism here,
as
a lot of people would say.
Yeah. So come back. I hope you didn't hang up just yet when you heard him say that.
Another way that sometimes people will view this, and again, even the communism, the socialism, all these things, like half the time when people talk about these things, they're talking about the most extreme case of it that really didn't even represent the tenets of what this is all about, right? Yeah. But again, it's another way of polarity, another way of creating an us versus them, system versus system, right? You just get people lost and caught up in stuff, right? But, going back to it, it looks kind of like, okay, so a redistribution of wealth already happens all the time. What they do is the elite will go into a country, they will destroy their leader, their system, everything they have. They will tank their currency. They will use the money they have to buy all of that currency. Then they will use that currency to buy the assets, which are now they're buying at a fraction of the price within that country. So what they effectively did was there was wealth in the country. They tanked it, bought everything, redistributed the wealth to themselves, right? In a very small group of people. and left the country poor and pillaged and all screwed up. And that's what they do over and over and over again. The Great Depression was just a redistribution of wealth, taking it from the community to themselves. Yeah. They were, when you saw the 2008 crash, they took it from the community to themselves. That's all they're doing. So this would look like, okay, let's abolish debt, remove central banking, and start realizing, hold on a second, we could actually print money however we want, like if we really wanted to. So why not do it where we remove all the debt, all these things, okay? Because who do they owe it to? Nobody. It's owed to nobody at the end of the day. It's stupid. So you abolish it all. Everybody from top to bottom, everybody's abolished. Then you create a certain amount of wealth that everyone starts with, right? And you can still play now within, okay, you work and you have your job and you make your money. You choose how you spend it. You choose how much you make. You do all that, right? And play within that system. See what happens. See what starts to change, right? Some people will end up back in debt but then again, why does there need to be debt?
Yep.
Like, it doesn't make sense. Why does there need to be taxes? Well, just print more money. You need a bridge. Go, you print the money, you build the bridge, and then as it comes in through, whether it's spent at a certain place or whatever, you can pull it back out of what do you call circulation if you need to. Like, there's so many different ways that we could play within a system that's slightly different than now, that isn't based around scarcity. Have all these people be poor, survival of the fittest, all these like mentalities make no sense.
If we focus on creating a world of abundance, what if we looked at the immigration problem? Man, all these damn Mexicans coming here to America, that mentality. And right now you can see it where the hatred for immigrants is stirring up again. Here we go. What if we looked at the immigration issue as, man, why are those people coming over here? What's going on over there? Why are they feeling so displaced? Maybe the best thing we can do is go help our neighbor to establish better economic situation for themselves, and maybe get rid of the corruption that's even more inundated in a lot of these countries than even here. How in the and then maybe we're not ready for this right now, but I think in the future that's going to be the objective. Is if my neighbor is starving, that eventually could show up on my doorstep, and I might want to selfishly get ahead of this and go, hey man, what's going on? Why are you having an issue? What's going on with your crops? Okay, let me give you a little help here so we can get you on your feet, so you're not, stealing my stuff in this winter, or, feeling displaced and moving off your land. And these people don't want to move. And if we can create a world of abundance and eliminate poverty within our generation, we could do this. We could literally eliminate poverty on this planet within I really think 10 years we could potentially do it if we've really focused on it. And everyone's living abundantly, and then with this taking on a new consciousness of operating synergetically and sustainably within this planet, within our planetary biosphere that we're living in. There'll be no need for money eventually. I mean, eventually everyone will be like, what's the point of even exchanging? Like, hey man, here's some milk, you got the eggs or whatever, or who knows what it's going to look like. I mean, we are going to, technology ain't going anywhere either, and so we're going to have the potential to eliminate a lot of labor that is kind of unnecessary, and free people up to just create a new world and like take collective consciousness to a new level. Like, I really think the future, maybe even in our lifetime, is we couldn't even recognize it. I really think it's beyond our own event horizon of what our true potential is, and what collectively, if when we free people from this crazy slavery that's going on in terms of the debt slavery, and again, I know that's just a state of mind too, but ultimately many of us are living under that, and if collectively we can free ourselves from that, I just think the future's so bright. And I mean, I know you obviously agree, that's why you're doing this, and you've caught the vision within your own personal experiences. I mean, I'm sure you've had many of your own personal experiences that have kind of, you've seen this potential vision of what the world could be. Maybe you can't even articulate it. It's just like a feeling, a sensation. It's like why you feel so optimistic about the future instead of like, oh shit, it's all coming down, we're in big trouble. And I feel the same way, and I think a lot of us do. We innately, I mean, I know, I get it. The cards are stacked against us. If it was a math equation, you'd think, geez, man, we're fucked. But I don't think that's where we're going, man. And I think there's a group of us out there who really see that, man. This is the calm before heaven, man. We're headed to heaven in many ways.
Yep. A lot of things can change really fast. And, a lot of people will say, based on the stuff you said and based on some of the stuff I was saying earlier, yeah, but there's a lot of criminals. You got to understand, these rulers, these people, they're criminals. They're like the worst of the worst. Well, it's like, if you really think in your own life, and maybe you find somebody, maybe you don't, maybe you know a friend. I know people directly in my life that, guess what? They were criminals. They were involved in things like having people killed. I'm not connected to these people, but I know these people. I knew them when we were younger. And the point is it's like, I've watched those people change from being that state of being to now being a completely different individual who no longer, it's not like they matured. I'm talking about they were adults and making decisions, and now they're adults and making decisions, and they're no longer doing that stuff because they realize, wow, I'm taking advantage of people, I'm hurting people, I'm doing this and doing that, and now they're like, I want to give back, I want to create connection, I want to create oneness. The point is that a lot of these people can change, and a lot of them will under the circumstances, and just because they might be evil looking now, it doesn't mean that that's who they are at their innate self and their innate being. And they have that opportunity. And so what does it take for us to make that change? Well, we all get wake-up calls. We all get signs. There's powerful people all over the world that are like waking up going, holy shit, I can't keep doing this anymore. What are white hats? They're people inside these institutions that go, wait a second, what am I supporting? I can't do this anymore. I still have a lot of power though. So I'm going to use that towards something that's going to help others. Their shift in consciousness is what creates the action that will create a change. It doesn't you create an action that'll create a shift in consciousness. We need to shift our consciousness to be able to create these new system structures. And so it doesn't even matter. You're not operating off of a new theory or a new belief system. You're shifting the way you see, feel, and understand things, and then you act in a completely different manner. And that's why, again, these things are intimately connected.
Do you think as we back the tiger into a corner, part of the collective evolution is going to be, we might need to consider the option of forgiveness? That, you know what, even though these people have done the most sick things you can ever imagine, and I'm not even saying that we should let them walk free on the streets, but maybe we shouldn't kill them. And even though, God, every part of us would love to just tear them limb from limb for what they've done. And it's, again, if the details are, well, if you listen to the details, gosh, all you can think about is eliminating them. But maybe, do you believe that part of our own collective evolution might be to consider forgiveness here? And then as we back the tiger in the corner, we say, listen, we're not going to kill you. In fact, we might even going to throw you into these little tiny cells that you threw us into, you asshole. But we'll give you a space that you can live a life, but with the wealth of this world, we have people that are going to watch you and make sure you're not allowed to leave here, and you're going to be you're on major restriction. You're never allowed to have control again of any institutions or anything. You can live off your life and then you can die. Do you think that's the option we might need to consider if we're going to make this transition the best possible, and that we don't turn again? Just repeat the cycle of, like all revolutions, they just murder and kill and do the same things. And man, once you get that thirst for blood, maybe it's hard to stop it. I don't know. I've never experienced it myself.
Yeah. I mean, you just said it, right? It's an option to consider. It's something we've done in the past. And you ask the question, where does it lead us? Right. And you can play these scenarios out in your own being, in your own sense of self in a meditation. It's like, okay, what type of world gets created if we take all these people, we murder them in the streets by hanging them, by chopping their heads off, by doing all these different wild things that go through our minds, right? What type of world does that create? Are we being something different than what they're being, right? That's a question you ask yourself, right? Then it's like, okay, what happens if we do? And this is you described a solution I've always even said for pedophiles. It's like, okay, so you have pedophiles, some of which fully recognize they have an issue, or they have something that's not so cohesive in society, and others who think it's like, hey, I want to do this and you shouldn't be able to stop me. Well, Okay, well, so we take those people and we isolate them because we know that, hey, there's something we need to figure out here to be able to cohesively exist in society. So let's take them to an area that actually promotes that. People will say, oh, throw a pedophile in jail and fucking let them have the worst of the worst. And it's like, well, guess what? That pedophile is going to be out in 10 or 15 years. Already a person who may be hurt inside, you put them in the worst situation for 10 or 15 years. And guess what? They enter back on the street now in a worse state than they were in. That doesn't show love for a being that is struggling and that needs help. That shows I don't give a shit about this person, and let's just fucking throw them over there. And I'm not going to think about how that may affect me 10, 15 years down the road, right? We need to start getting into that state where, and this is why this recent interview we did is so important, is here's a person that was, part of elite pedophile rings, that was part of ritual sacrifice and all these different things. And she's, she has her story, and she comes out on the other side, having processed it, sharing with the world where these people who do this are coming from. So instead of just seeing them as evil pieces of crap, she's been able to be right there and realize perhaps what they went through. Some of the difficult mind control type stuff that they've been subject to, the various deficiencies in their character and stuff that keep getting built upon and built upon and built upon. You realize that these people in their own ways are also damaged. And this isn't about making excuses for them. This is about having empathy for, I want to solve an issue. Mm-hmm. I don't want to just, take the issue and be, oh yeah, it's over there and let's just throw those people in jail.
What's the best solution? What's the best solution? Instead of like your emotional reaction to it, which we all experience. Gosh, dude. I mean, every one of us has a killer in us. Okay. I mean, we get it. We have it all. We run the gamut in terms of the spectrum of human existence. We all have it in us. Dark, light, the whole deal. But yeah, man, what is the best solution? How do we actually solve the problem in the most optimal way? And I think we must. Forgiveness has to be a real option here, and I think if you do back that tiger in a corner, you back anything, even it could be a pedophile like we're talking about, and you put them in an even more stressful situation, they might even lash out even worse. And again, I'm not saying we make it Club Med or anything like that. I'm not saying we reward it, but just everyone should be given some sort of dignity in their life, and I think if you give them that, they're gonna behave the best. They're not gonna create problems for other people, and at least there's a less probability of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It sort of goes back to even a simple way, and this would be something for parents probably more so to really connect with. But a simple way is like, let's say it was your son or daughter who was committing an act that was really, really, really atrocious. What feeling do you have within you that connects to them still, that says, I want them to be helped. Mm-hmm. I'm not just going to disown them and want to put them in a fiery pit for the rest of their existence, right? But what part of, I would still want to see that they're helped, that they're taken care of, because it's like I have that love connection. Well, the reality is that love connection exists between all of us. Mm. The challenge is we've been so conditioned up here to see someone else as an enemy. But that connection's always still there. It's why we feel when we see people suffering, and all these different things, right? When we take all the stuff away, right? I always say to people, you meditate. Right? And you meditate, and so many people will say, oh, I took mushrooms, or I did ayahuasca, or I meditated, and through that I felt source consciousness. I felt that everything just was. And it was a beautiful feeling, right? It's like, great, you tapped into the reality of our world, reality of our existence. Everything just is, and we're all connected. When we come back into the mind and we suddenly go, well, that person's an evil piece of crap, that person's this, that person's that, blah, blah, blah. It's like, that's in your head. You already felt the reality of everything and what it is. It's all part of the same thing expressing itself, right? Now it's time to stay in that state in the heart and go, how can I truly assist and solve this, with isolating it over there in some shitty condition and saying someone else's problem? That doesn't solve anything, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and it's the most holistic approach to this, I think. And Joe, man, I say this all the time, but we live in such incredible times, and it's fascinating to just watch it unfold, and there's just so much to take in. I'm kind of a junkie. Ever since I was a little kid, I've been a junkie to conceptualize the whole world and on some level, whatever that even means. And I've just been as curious as could be about it. And I just feel so grateful to live in a time where we can have so much access to what's going on. I mean, yeah, we have to sift through all. I mean, now it's almost like too much info. You got to sift through a lot of bullshit, but that's even fun too on some level. I mean, it's this whole human story, and I thank you for holding the torch, a torch of faith for people. You're a light in a dark place sometimes, and and not just you, but everyone that's working with you and over at Collective Evolution. You guys have, the content you've put out has it's been that flashlight when people are lost in the dark forest, and then all of a sudden there's a little light in the end of the tunnel, and you're like, whoa, what's that? And it's like the search party finally finds you. I mean, people can't come and pick you up and walk you out of the forest. You got to walk on your own. But there are sometimes people that are shining the light on the path that can help you out. And the content you guys have created has been that for people. And I just want to thank you for that. I know it's not about you, and it's not about, blowing up you guys' egos or anything like that. I know you don't really care about that. Ultimately, it's about, let's get this shit done, man. We see the bigger vision here. Let's make it happen. If I know it kind of happens on its own, but man, if we have any control in this happening sooner than later, I'm kind of lobbying for that. Like the quickest timeline possible. I'm in favor of. I would love to be alive when when this all comes to reality in terms of a true collective model that people, we can kind of look back on this time and go, holy cow, can you even, Grandpa, tell me about when you lived back in the old paradigm, and I can kind of see that happening. I hope it is. And if it isn't, oh well. I mean, if this is a big cruise ship we're trying to turn around, and, when you're talking about turning around humanity, it takes generations sometimes, and with that said, that is to say, man, our forefathers before us have been laying the path for this. This is not happening in a vacuum. This truth movement is not happening in a vacuum. Didn't just come out of nowhere. This came off the backs of pioneers, dudes. Yep. I mean, I say this to anyone. I mean, all the people who've been arrested for smoking weed. I mean, thank you guys for growing it, even at the risk of your own freedom. Hallelujah. Yep. I'm so grateful you guys did that. All the people who've been doing that in all different realms of the world, holding on to those like esoteric truths, even at the risk of your own life. Holy cow, man. If they didn't do that, we wouldn't be where we are today. And I think it's pretty spectacular to remember that this is like a generational story that's like unfolding. And, you guys do a great job covering it. I really appreciate you for coming on, brother.
Yeah, much appreciated, and likewise to yourself. You're one of those people with the flashlight in the forest, right? And that's what this is about. Is we just got to keep giving her. We got to keep doing it, and realizing it's like even to that like collective story. Like if you ask anybody, you say, hey, sky's the limit, right? Create a world of just beauty and abundance, right? We all can kind of recite a similar story of like how we'd be able to live. So we already know the story's here. Now it's just about creating the space, creating the environment where we believe enough that we can actually do that, right? Yeah. It's incredible, really, that we all it's like we all know, deep down that this is possible and that we can do this. It's keep watering that and keep working it.
Absolutely. If people check Joe Martino out, Collective Evolution, their YouTube channel just passed 70,000. Congratulations on that. Their Facebook page is like ridiculous bajillion people on it. I mean, literally millions. And your YouTube content has just gotten you guys, you're putting out the effort on it, man, and it's getting better and better. And if you liked what Joe has been talking about today, continue to follow him over there. And again, we're all in this together, and I really appreciate it, Joe. Thank you, homie.
Awesome. Yeah. Appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity. And, one last thing is just keep an eye out. We got CETV coming out really soon. I won't go into too much detail, but for anybody who is interested in exploring this stuff deeper, we got a really, really cool channel coming out shortly that we're very excited about in terms of like I was talking about some of these deep interviews. We got some new shows, stuff like that coming out. It's going to be really awesome stuff. So keep an eye out.
Can't wait. CETV. Man, it just keeps evolving. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. By the need of it and what we know, is going to help the best in our own inspiration. And that's pretty much it. That's what we follow.
Joe Martino. Thank you, brother.
Awesome. Thank you.